debate over whether or not there will actually be a second presidential debate marches on as both candidates fill in a new blank spot in their calendars. Plus,
and coming up next on Real America's Voice, Hurricane Delta is making landfall this afternoon. We'll have a live report next.
And finally, new details emerge on the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
Those stories and so much more on this edition of News On. And happy Friday to you, and welcome to News On. I'm Miranda. Thank you so much for joining us. As residents of Louisiana brace for Hurricane Delta, they are already getting pounded by heavy rain. The Category 3 hurricane now is expected to hit that state this evening, bringing with it life-threatening storm surge and ferocious winds. This all comes as residents are still reeling from the damage made by Hurricane Laura, which battered that state just this past August. For more on this and a live look at how conditions are currently on the ground in Port Arthur, Texas, let's head over to Weather Nation correspondent Ben McMillan. Ben, what can you tell us? It appears to be a little windy there. We're going to try to reestablish our connection with Ben. You can see the rain coming in, the feeder bands. We're also going to be talking with the mayor of Lake Charles, Louisiana, a little bit later in the show and get an update for him. Again, a lot of these residents still have tarps. A lot of these homes have been battered from what was Hurricane Laura, which was a Category 4 storm. We'll try to reconnect with Ben McMillan here shortly. Meanwhile, let's look at politics. President Trump vows complete transparency when it comes to the Russian collusion story. He's now ordered the declassification of all relevant documents related to that investigation. The move is an effort to shed light on what he describes as a false Russian collusion narrative. Now, the president and his supporters hope that these new documents reveal that Hillary Clinton operatives were behind that probe, which led to a 3-year investigation by the FBI. Just the News put together a list of the 40 most important documents yet to be released that would help America understand what really happened and who is most culpable. To see this list in its entirety, just visit justthenews.com. It's currently at the top of the website. We now want to head back out to Ben McMillan, who appears to have a steadier shot now. We understand the weather conditions are picking up there, even from just speaking to you moments ago.
Delta, power Hurricane Delta on the coast of Texas and Louisiana. We're in Port Arthur, where the outer bands are starting to make their way into the area here. You can see the lake behind me, Sabine Lake, is already starting to spill into the backyards of houses. And on a normal days, this would be a major problem. But that now coupled with the debris from Hurricane Laura that is still present, that has not been cleaned up, is creating major headaches. It's creating many more hazards. These pieces of debris become flying missiles when these winds pick up, and you can see it's already starting to blow me around a little bit. So it's just going to get more and more dangerous as we see those winds increase to potentially up over 100 miles an hour. And unfortunately, many homes in places like Lake Charles have blue tarps. Repair work is not done. It's going to be a long night ahead for the residents of Louisiana. Reporting for Real America's Voice on the Louisiana coast, I'm Ben McMillan. We'll throw it back to you.
Ben, thank you, and stay safe as always. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to have the mayor from Lake Charles, Louisiana, joining us live coming up later on in the broadcast to give us an update on the efforts there, because as Ben mentioned, there are still blue tarps on many of the homes, as you saw when we did our reports there live on the ground. Going back now over to politics, President Trump is set to do his first in-person on-camera interview since contracting COVID-19. Dr. Mark Siegel, a medical analyst for Fox News, will conduct that interview as well as a medical evaluation that will air sometime later today. This summer, Dr. Siegel interviewed the president, who boasted about his cognitive abilities. During a phone interview since his hospitalization, Trump could be heard repeatedly coughing and catching his breath. It isn't clear if Trump is COVID-free yet. but he said he wants to hold a campaign rally as early as tomorrow, possibly in Florida. He's also talked about Pennsylvania. And according to reports, again, his White House doctor has given the all clear for him to do so, saying that he would be able to make a, quote, safe return, and that the president has responded, quote, extremely well to therapy. And it looks like, despite the fact that the second presidential debate has yet to be officially canceled, both candidates are seemingly moving on. Democratic nominee Joe Biden will now take part in a town hall forum that will be hosted by ABC News on the night of what was supposed to be the second presidential debate. Again, that's October 15th. The former vice president will participate in an event in Philadelphia that will be moderated by ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos. The announcement indicates that the second presidential debate, again, will no longer take place. Again, as planned, October 15th, after President Trump just balked at the idea of this last-minute decision that came down the other day to make it now virtual. Okay, so if that wasn't enough, there could be even more of a shakeup when it comes to the possibility of a second presidential debate. Again, if it happens at all. There are now calls for the moderator of next week's, again, probable presidential debate, Steve Scully, who you see right there, to be disqualified after he tweeted Anthony Scaramucci for what appeared to be advice. Yeah. This after the president accused him of bias. Scully, that is. Scully asked the former White House advisor, Scaramucci, quote, should I respond to Trump, in a tweet which Twitter users guessed appeared to be misdirected attempt at a private message. So you just saw that picture. Trump had complained to Fox News host Sean Hannity yesterday that Scully was a never-Trumper and someone he said worked for Biden at some point. As you saw that picture, Scully, who works for C-SPAN, did in fact intern with Biden several years ago and reportedly also worked for Senator Kennedy, who's a Democrat. And as you just saw, there was a picture of Biden and Scully that's been circulating all around social media for several days. We brought this up the other day here on News On during our bipartisan panel. We're going to get to a bizarre story coming up a little bit after in our broadcast. This alleged plot to kill and overthrow the governor of Michigan. Just bizarre. You just got to hear it to believe it. We're going to talk more about that. We're also going to have a new bipartisan panel weighing in on what is going to happen now, the days leading up to the election with all this going on, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now introducing this idea of the 25th Amendment, saying that the president may be incapacitated. How far could this possibly go? We're going to have our panel weigh in. We're also going to hear your voice coming up. A lot of you responding to our question from yesterday. We're going to share that with you coming up here on News On. We'll be right back. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. Now for this bizarre story today that really is just everyone is talking about. And this is this alleged plot to kidnap, kill, and overthrow the government. And it's been foiled in Michigan. Now several members of the group called Wolverine Watchmen have been arrested, charged in an alleged violent and disturbing scheme to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah, 6 men now face federal and state charges, and at least 7 other people face Michigan state charges in this plot. According to court documents, the FBI learned about the plan through social media.
The individuals in custody are suspected to have attempted to identify the home addresses of law enforcement officers in order to target them, made threats of violence intended to instigate a civil war, and engaged in planning and training for an operation to attack the Capitol building of Michigan and to kidnap government officials, including the governor of Michigan.
Yeah, authorities say a house in Jackson County, Michigan served as this kind of training center, if you will, for a group charged with plotting to kidnap the governor. The FBI then raided the home of Pete Masuko and Joseph Morrison overnight. They're charged with threat of terrorism, providing material for terrorist acts, and felony firearm violation. Court documents also show the FBI used an undercover agent to travel with the group to Ohio to meet with other members. The suspects are accused of planning to either murder, quote, tyrants or take a sitting governor, if you will. The group reportedly believed Governor Whitmer and other state governments are violating the U.S. Constitution. Whitmer blames President Trump's rhetoric for the plot.
Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these 2 Michigan militia groups. Stand back and stand by, he told them. Stand back and stand by. Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry.
The president responded to Whitmer's allegations by taking to Twitter to say this, which you can see right there on your screen. Governor Whitmer of Michigan has done a terrible job, and that his Justice Department and federal law enforcement announced today that they foiled a dangerous plot against the governor of Michigan. Rather than say thank you, she calls me a white supremacist. The president went on to say that he does not tolerate any extreme violence, defending all Americans, even those who oppose and attack me, is what I will always do as your president. And we'll continue to follow that story. We now want to talk more about the election day, because we are now, just believe it or not, it's hard to believe this, we are now just 25 days away. Can you believe it? And it's important that as issues that could impact the election are discussed here at length here on this program. That's why I'm so excited today to bring in our panel. Joining us now is the Dean of Liberty University School of Business and former Congressman for the great state of Virginia, Dave Brack. Good to see you, Dave.
Thank you. Great to be on.
Also joining us live today is Sarah Evangeline Norman. She is a Democratic strategist and served as a senior advisor of digital on the Kamala Harris 2020 campaign. Thank you both for joining us. Let's get right into it. We have a lot to discuss today. Thank you for having me. Yes, pleasure. So I can't believe we're just 25 days away, but we are. We're 25 days away from the election. Let's start with ladies first. What are some of the biggest takeaways you think that will impact voters down to the stretch? I mean, we're still kind of here in limbo land over this whole idea of this second presidential debate. I mean, both parties appear to seem to be moving on, if you will, but there's still people hoping that it could happen. So what do you think is going to transpire in the days ahead?
You know, I really do hope that we have the debate, because undecided voters do deserve to hear more from both candidates. In terms of the major issues, I think right now people are really scared for their health care. You know, with the president getting sick and, you know, he got better thanks to the super medicine that he had access to. And thank God that he did. But the rest of us don't have that same access. And what's really scary is that if you're lucky enough to survive this virus that has already killed 200,000 Americans, what could harm you later is that it could prevent you from getting healthcare access in the future, because it could count as a pre-existing condition. So I think this election is going to come down to the virus and healthcare.
Dave, do you agree with that?
Well, I agree that the virus is the biggest issue right now, but what no one will do is pay attention to where it came from, right? Dr. Yan was in the lab, she's a PhD scientist in the Chinese lab, and she says it was designed, it didn't come from animals, designed in the lab and was unleashed by the CCP. And so when the Democrats use this 200,000 deaths as a cudgel against Republicans in a partisan sense, I think it's just awful. It's irrational and it's immoral. It's clear where it came from, right? The Chinese let 400,000 flights out to Milan and New York City and San Francisco when they knew they had a pandemic on their hands, and when they shut down all flights to Beijing. And so I don't know why the president doesn't pay more attention to that. The pre-existing conditions thing is just a Democrat talking point they bring up a month before the election. They weren't talking about it 2 or 3 months ago. They're just bringing it up with health. But China is a huge issue, and the pandemic is a huge issue, and the economy is roaring back. I think we're going to be over 25% GDP growth, and I don't think you'd get that under moving toward a more socialist, big state Democrat policies.
Yeah, I want to talk. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
Under the policies right now, a huge percent of Americans have lost their jobs. 1 out of 5 small businesses are shut down. And we can talk about, where this virus came from, but I think it's more important to talk about how to handle it now.
Well, I agree, but why is it down? It's down because China sent us the virus. I did a PhD in economics. The unemployment rates were at all-time lows. And if you are going to go on TV right now and you say the economy is tanked because of President Trump's policies, let me hear you say that.
I think that we could have done a lot better. The president knew about this on January 28th. And could you imagine if people had more time to prepare? We didn't know until mid-March. I mean, right now, people would have more savings.
You're talking about the economy?
Yes, I'm talking about people's livelihood.
No, I think you're referring, I think the question is talking about COVID. Yeah. I think they're talking about COVID. Yeah. But he did, and if I can just interject real quickly, Sarah, the president did stop incoming flights from Asia.
He did, not for everyone.
And was criticized by the Democratic Party for doing so.
So he did shut down some traffic from Asia, and that is true. But there is so much more that could be done. For example, right now, instead of passing a relief bill that will bring money to people's pockets right now, the president has said that we need to prioritize pushing through the Supreme Court seat before he has to face voters on November 3rd. And what I wish he was doing was trying to get Americans some of the relief that they deserve.
Congressman, I want to ask you something. Go ahead, respond to that. You have a few minutes.
Yeah, I just think the claims she's making are false. The president said, put the $1,200 checks in front of me tomorrow, I'll sign it. What he won't sign is a paycheck relief for bankrupt blue states. The virus is worst hit in all the blue states. The economies are worse in the blue states. We live in a federal system where the states and the governors are controlled. And the worst performing states are the blue ones, the Democrat ones. So she's right, you can take actions. But we live in a republic where the governors are free to do whatever policies they want. And New York is just the prime A example of failure. And then California and Illinois and all the big Democrat cities. So they're more than free to take actions. If she's got good policy recommendations, they should implement them. But they have not done it. And to put it all at the feet of the president, and she didn't answer the economic question, right? Biden still wants to shut down the economy. We want, on the Republican side, we want to open it up and get it roaring. So how you have a booming economy when you still want to shut it down is beyond me.
Well, we're going to talk more about that coming up after the break, Sarah. But I want to give you enough time, and we're coming up on a break, so hold that thought. We're going to talk more about COVID-19. Again, we are now just 25 days from the election. There are so many things going on in politics, including the latest effort by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to introduce again this 25th Amendment. What impact that could have, if any. We'll discuss it with our panel coming up after the break. We'll be right back. welcome back to News On. It's Friday, but it's still a busy news day. We have a lot to get into, so let's welcome back our panel. Rejoining us once again, Democratic strategist Sarah Evangeline Norman, and also with us, former Congressman Dave Pratt. Thank you both for sticking around. We have a lot of ground to cover here today, but real quickly, right before the break, Sarah, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to something that the Congressman brought up, referring to blue states being hit the hardest because of COVID-19. Just the other day, as you probably know, New York being among them, saying that 50% of these restaurants may never reopen again. And as you know, I'm in Florida, and we're hearing hundreds and hundreds of people are moving from New York down to Florida because businesses aren't reopening. Does the congressman make up a valid argument there?
No, I don't think so. The whole country is hit hard by COVID, and each state has been up and down. And what's important here is that we as a country need to be able to move forward. And it would be really nice if the president set an example for everyone to please wear your masks.
Going to that point, Congressman, okay, so the president is saying that he hopes, again, he made an interview last night that he hopes to return to doing his rallies. He's talking about possibly doing one here in Florida over the weekend, Pennsylvania as well. Again, if he can, the doctor's given the okay, but there's been a lot of confusion of information being relayed from the doctors. We still don't even know the last time the president took the test. Is that something, when you're hearing, especially Vice President Mike Pence said during the vice presidential debate, we're all about transparency. Why is it so difficult to just find out when the president last had a test? Don't the American people deserve to hear that?
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, they're going to have tests every single day before the second debate, and he's agreed to that so that it's live. But, you know, the talking points on these little peculiar things are okay. But, you know, I mean, Gavin Newsom in California said you should put your mask on before you have the next bite of your hamburger. So the liberal states are doing all the right things with masks. I mean, everyone's doing masks. But the data, you know, this serious cases have to do with senior citizens in the homes, et cetera. The Democrats have shut down the entire economy. New York is devastated. Their real estate market is toast. And,
but let me go back to that point, though. Let me go back again. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Congressman. But to interrupt real quickly, here you have two of the oldest candidates, you know, running for office right now. We know, again, if you believe the research, those most at risk are those that are over the age of 70, which the president falls in that category. So is he sending mixed messages there by saying protect yourself? And then he himself was not shown wearing a mask at multiple events, including the one that was at the Rose Garden, as you're aware of.
Yeah, no, they can all do a better job at these high-end functions. You know, a lot of folks, the Democrats, you can go one for one all day long on this petty stuff. You know, so-and-so took off his mask. And so, right, we got serious issues to deal with. We should not be shutting down all the schools, deferring kids' education off for a year, putting businesses in bankruptcy across the country. Those are the serious issues that affect the average person across the country. That's what the Democrats can do little talking points here and there. Let's get the economy open. Everyone's being careful, right? At our school, everyone's wearing masks and distancing. And it's up to you, too, to protect yourself somewhat.
Yeah, Sarah, I want to go to the point, and this is something that I've heard, you know, multiple people bring up, regardless of what side of the spectrum that you're on, but this has been especially hard for children. Most recently, new data is saying, you know, not just children, but suicide rates among veterans is up 20% because of the pandemic. Children, and especially according to most experts, are having a very difficult time being socially isolated from their classmates, their friends. We know anxiety, we know depression, we know suicide rates. I lost my sister to suicide, so of course this is a sensitive issue to me. But there is that concern for mental health. What do Democrats have to say about that?
You know, it's a real issue. America is going through a really hard time right now. And of course, everyone wants businesses to reopen and to get back to school. But we have to do this safely. Otherwise, we're going to have to shut down again and prolong this process of going back and forth. But of course, it's concerning. America's mental health is really
why, though?
low.
Let me ask you, though. I've heard that over and over and over again. So again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. But why? If we know children have very minimal risk of having any harm, being almost like asymptomatic, if you will, why can't they go back to school? That is the argument that I hear a lot of people, again, on the right, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, make.
So there's still children who are getting very sick from this, and they're spreading. They're spreading the virus. And we're also asking teachers and parents to put themselves at risk by bringing their kids back in school. And if you think about it, this is really dividing the teacher's attention. I mean, they have to set up the classroom for kids to come in school, and then they have to focus on Zoom. This isn't fair to teachers who already are not paid enough. And this is, of course, a huge mental drain on America that nobody wants. We all want this to end as quickly as possible and for kids to get back in school. But it simply has to be done in the most responsible way.
Yeah, I want to, and we're going to obviously continue to follow this. We're not going to resolve this today, clearly. But I want to kind of go back to this second possible presidential debate, if you will. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast this supposed exchange between Anthony Scaramucci and Scully, who was going to be the moderator from C-SPAN. That was, again, the second presidential debate was supposed to take place October 15th. That was supposed to take place in Miami. Supposedly, again, most people that saw this tweet thought it was supposed to be a private message, if you will. What is your reaction to this, Congressman? I mean, here is a gentleman who did at one point intern with Biden, and there's that picture, as we showed earlier in the broadcast, of there you see it right there, floating all over social media. What are the optics of this show viewers?
I don't really care. I know Scully personally. I was on his show, C-SPAN, so he's a fair guy. So I mean, I just make my judgments based on that. Scaramucci, a lot of this is last minute politics on both sides. The thing is to have the debate in person, so it is a debate, right? All these deep state groups, right, including this presidential commission, didn't have the politeness to call the president of the United States an hour or two ahead of time for a heads up. You know, that's the shocking part here, is the degree of the new politics and the meanness and the violence in the streets and all this stuff. That all has to go bye-bye.
Do you think we'll actually see it? And this is something I've been asking various people again since the news broke down the other day. I mean, do you think we'll actually see? I mean, I know things happen all the time. People could change their minds. Do you think we'll see a debate?
Maybe not the second, probably the third, and then they're pushing for one in the last week, and that probably won't happen. So that's my best guesstimate right now.
Sarah, I see you nodding your head. Do you agree with that? And how do you feel about the moderator, real quickly, with about 40 seconds?
You know, I think where the congressman and I agree is that there should be more debates, and the American people deserve to hear this. What I'm hoping, whether they're in person or over video conference, is that there's less interruption so that the American people can hear this information. But I do think the debates will happen. Maybe the next one, maybe not, but I think we will see another debate before this is over.
We'll have to see. And real quickly, we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you about this whole 25th Amendment that Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi is bringing up. We only have time for a yes or no rapid fire question, if you will. So I'm going to go to you, Congressman. Do you see anything coming out of this, yes or no?
Pure politics, no.
Pure politics, no. Last word to you, Sarah.
You know, if it were a different president, it would be easy to tell if his erratic behavior was due to his medications or if it was just
Is it going to go anywhere? Is it going to go anywhere? I have to go to commercial break. Tell me, what do you think?
Well,
oh, my goodness.
I don't know, but I think it's actually legitimate to explore.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah, Congressman. Yeah, she's on the record. Thank you both so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you here again here on News On. All right, so we've been talking about this idea of the possible second presidential debate. We asked you what you think. We're going to share your voice coming up next. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. Our goal here is to always give you a voice here at Real America's Voice. That's what we're all about. And this is a segment on the show where we're doing just that. You can help us by sharing your voice, by submitting a video, commenting, or sending us a private message on any of our social media platforms, such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parlay, CloudHub, LinkedIn, and of course, our online community platform at americasvoice.news. And don't forget, download our app. Take us on the go. With that said, let's hop right into it because we received an immense amount of responses. So yesterday we asked this question. The second presidential debate, October 15th, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden will be virtual due to COVID concerns. What do you think about the change and how could it impact the debate? Well, we already know that. Right now, there is no second debate. As I mentioned, Vice President Joe Biden saying he's going to do a town hall with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, the president trying to do a rally as well. He's expected to do a rally in Florida and Pennsylvania over the weekend. He's going to see if he can put it together. Of course, keep it right here on Real America's Voice if that does in fact happen. But here are some of the responses that we received to that very question. Michael Blake from Twitter saying this: why bother? That is no debate. Sounds more like one's party's senile concern instead of COVID. Let Joe be Joe, smiley face. Thank you, Michael. And next response we have from Melissa Hornig of Facebook. She says, no to virtual, just fine the way it is. No reason to go virtual. We are moving ahead, not backwards. Also from Facebook, we have Julia Doubleday saying this: did you people actually watch the last debate? Because Trump, I believe, interrupted Biden about 22 times. Biden wasn't allowed any time to debate anything. Trump sucked up all the time with his rantings. With virtual, you could cut him off. He doesn't want that. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Julia. Moving on, Maggie Moore from Twitter asked this: what's Joe afraid of? He can wear an N95 mask like he says will be his doctrine, of course, if he wins right. And Cheryl from Twitter said this: Trump and the campaign said no, they will hold a rally instead. Thank you both very much. Now, again, squeezing in as many in here as possible. We're going to just fire them off. All right? Starting from Tex from Twitter, who says, shouldn't be one, period. And Lorraine from Twitter as well says, debate will be worthless, too easily manipulated. And from Facebook, we have Tom Watley. It's not a debate unless in person. Paul Sams from Facebook as well said, should be in person. Tyler Hollis says, Trump has backed out of debate. And lastly, Scott Fairchild, again from Facebook, I'd like to see it done in person as well. But I also think that since the POTUS was infected and could very well still have symptoms, I believe it is in the best interest of safety to hold it virtually, in my opinion. Wow, thank you so much for all of your opinions and comments and questions. We really do appreciate it. Again, we are all over social media, so just pick the platform or your choice, again, or you can join our community. All right, now for the moment you've been waiting for. This is our question of, I would say the day, but I guess technically it'd be the weekend. So we're asking you this, how many of you are still undecided when it comes to this presidential election, and why? Right? Because that's really the key here. We want to hear your voice on this. Please, again, you can submit us a video. We'd love to hear why. We'd love to see your beautiful faces. You can also post a comment, again, on our social media platforms. We really want to know. We've only heard from one of you that actually said that you were undecided, but we didn't actually get the answer why. This was a viewer that you may have seen a little while ago who posted a question actually to all of you, but said that he personally had voted for President Trump during the 2016 election, but was considering Joe Biden, but didn't actually tell us why. So we'd love to hear the why. So if you know someone who's undecided, or if you yourself are undecided, share your voice with us. Again, that's hashtag share your voice. There is still much more to come. Oh, and don't let me forget, my director just reminded me. Thank you, David. You can find me at Real Miranda Khan. All right, still to come here on this edition of News On. We are going to be getting an update from the mayor of Lake Charles on the situation of Hurricane Delta. having way too much fun for this Friday. Welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. This year's Nobel Peace Prize is being awarded to the UN's World Food Program. The World Food Program is the world's largest humanitarian organization addressing hunger and promoting food security. The Nobel Committee said the WFP deserved the prize for its efforts in preventing the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. Last year, the World Food Program helped nearly 100 million hunger victims in 88 countries. How awesome is that? The prize, in case you're wondering, is one of the most prestigious in the world. It recognizes those who have contributed the most towards ending conflict, promoting peace, and building relationships between nations. Meanwhile, in their own effort to change the world, Amazon has some shocking news of its own. So the multinational tech company is debuting its first ever electric delivery vehicle. It's all part of Amazon's commitment to be net zero cartoon by 2040. 10,000 vehicles are expected to be on the roads within the next 2 years, 100,000 before the end of the decade. They'll have state-of-the-art sensor detection and exterior cameras that are connected to a digital display inside the cabin. Amazon says these vehicles are raising the bar for the future of generation delivery. Well, the company has certainly been doing well during the pandemic, to say the least, so I think they have the funds to do it. And speaking of electric cars, here's a really interesting story that I'm sure will make you appreciate your morning commute a little more. The Tesla Roadster made its first close approach to Mars this week. That's right, you heard me correctly, Mars. So the Roadster is an electric sports car with a mannequin in the driver's seat, obviously. Wednesday, SpaceX tweeted that the vehicle came within just 5 million miles of the red planet. The vehicle was reportedly traveled more than 1 billion miles since launching over 2 years ago. The Roadster has purposely completed one full orbit around the sun. At last check, it was over 37 million miles from Earth. And here's a story that our producer's germaphobe girlfriend finds very disgusting. May not be his girlfriend anymore after this story. Despite the positive trends, a new study suggests hand hygiene has increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's a good thing. But researchers found that the odds of a person remembering to wash their hands after coughing, sneezing, or blowing their nose was 2.3 times higher in 2020 than in 2019. Yay! The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention compared survey data from October 2019 with June of this year. And when it came to washing hands before eating at a restaurant, 70% of people reported doing that in 2020 compared to 55% who said they did that in 2019. See, I think you should keep this girlfriend, Dane. And washing hands before eating at home, well, guess what? That increased from 63%, rather, easy for me to say, to 74%. The study doesn't specify whether the changes in hand washing were due to the pandemic, but I think it's safe to say, right? And finally, John Lennon loved New York City, and it's loving him back with a bright tribute. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Blue lights with the white peace signs are shining on the Empire State Building until 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Today would have been Lennon's 80th birthday. Still to come here on News On, we're going to have a live update from the mayor of Lake Charles, Louisiana, as Hurricane Delta is set to hit there this evening. We'll be right back. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda with the state of Louisiana on high alert as Hurricane Delta continues to inch closer to the coast. We wanted to give you some insight into how cities in the path of that storm are now preparing for yet another potentially deadly storm. For more on that, I'm happy to welcome in the mayor of Lake Charles, Louisiana, a place I used to call home, Nick Hunter. I know how incredibly busy you must be right now, Mayor, so thank you for taking the time to join us here on News On.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
So, Mayor, we were there on the ground shortly after Hurricane Laura hit your area, a very devastating hurricane. I think closest that came to it was Hurricane Rita. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but we just saw a sea of blue tarp, me along with Ben McMillan with Weather Nation, if you will. And I know many of those tarps still remain over what used to be roofs. So how are you preparing with all this?
Well, let me tell you, we've done everything humanly possible. There's a lot of emotions about how could this be happening, unprecedented, unimaginable. But local government, public safety right now, we're putting all of that to the side. We have one task and one job at hand right now, and that's to get through the immediacy of Hurricane Delta. And the number one concern is human life and public safety. Right. And so we have an emergency preparedness plan for hurricanes that we have enacted. It has certainly been tweaked this year with everything happening and with what we went through 6 weeks ago with Laura. But we have our assets in place, we have our employees in place, and we have been really encouraging people to leave. And I think a lot of people have heeded that advice.
Well, that's good to hear. Of course, I know we talked right before the break that last time I was there, you were really in need of manpower, if you will, that you had ample supplies. But now, obviously, with the storm coming, a lot of those people are evacuating. How are you handling that need? And again, the tarps, like, are you worried about flying debris because certain things aren't necessarily put back in place?
We're absolutely worried about 100 things left over from Laura, debris being one. There's a lot of debris still on the sides of the road here in Lake Charles left over from Laura. It would be an impossibility to pick up that much amount of debris over the last 6 weeks. And remember, every day there's a new business or a new home that is gutting their building. So the debris shows up hourly every day. And so it would be like running a marathon and then stopping for a minute and then having someone else say, okay, now you got to run another marathon. And that's what we're going through right now.
Yeah, for the people, I mean, again, my heart goes out to you, and I wish that we were speaking under better circumstances. I did consider Lake Charles home at one point in time, and so it's just hard to see you guys going through this again. But for the people watching, we only have a few seconds remaining, and we're going to obviously continue to pray for all of you. But what can people do that are watching? What can they do to help you?
Well, I believe in the power of prayer, and I would ask anyone in this country watching this right now, please pray for Lake Charles, pray for Southwest Louisiana, and when you do pray, what is appropriate to you to donate or contribute. There's a local foundation, community foundation, United Way, that have funds set up for recovery. But just remember Lake Charles. The national press at times won't cover us, and I'm so happy to be getting the chance to talk with you, and I thank you so much for that, Miranda, because it means a lot.
Well, you mean a lot to us, so thank you so much. Stay safe. We will continue to pray for you. You are resilient. I said it before and I'll say it again. You'll get through this.
Thank you,
Mayor. God bless. Have a great weekend. Hopefully it misses them. That will do it for this edition of News On. As always, you can follow us on social media and you can join our community page on our website. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday at noon Eastern. Again, the power of prayer. It's a beautiful thing. Please pray for the people of Lake Charles, Louisiana. They need it.